Hi and a very welcome back to all. Today we are going to understand about the topic that is of enzymes. So we all have already come across term that is enzyme somewhere along in your studies, right? We are going to understand about enzymes, and in this lecture mainly I'll be explaining you the nomenclature and classification of enzyme, along with its a little bit brief history, right? Okay, so and I'm very sorry for this very weird thumbnail that I have kept, because this is the only thing that I could thought I can think of when it comes to enzymes, so I just kept it like this. Anyways, understanding enzymes is more important, so let us start first of all with understanding enzyme, a little bit history, right? So the very first enzyme that was discovered was actually diastase, and the contribution, the credit for this goes to Anselme Payen in 1833. So diastase was the very first enzyme, and the enzyme term was coined by a German physiologist who is Wilhelm Kuhn. So Kuhn is mainly credited for the coining of this term, which we now call as enzyme, and he coined it in 1877. But the very first term that was used for enzymes in long back was ferments, right? So enzymes were actually called as ferments, because it was supposed to be present only in yeast. So it was believed, actually the process of fermentation was carried out with yeasts only, and therefore it was believed that only if we use yeast, then and then only fermentation can take place, and yeast were the only organisms that were used for fermentation. And since yeast had something that led to fermentation, and therefore that particular thing was called as ferments. At that time enzymes was not the term that was used. Now for those who do not know what fermentation is actually the breaking down of organic substrates like glucose anaerobically, that is in absence of oxygen, right? So when oxygen is not there, so the substrates get broken down, and this is called fermentation, right? So this is a basic process that we can see in many bacteria, in many fungi, and yeast itself is a fungi, right? So fermentation leads to so many products that we know today. Most of wines and beers are formed because of fermentation, right? We have alcohols that is made from grapes, from apple, right? So all of this is done by the process of fermentation, and the carbon dioxide that is released is used up in the formation of what we say, leavening of dough, right? So what is fermentation actually is that yeast cell actually takes sugar, and in the yeast cell fermentation takes place, where this leads to the formation of ATP, which is energy repository, right? We all know ATP is adenosine triphosphate, and by fermentation the sugar, the carbohydrate that is available, gets converted into ethanol, that is alcohol, and carbon dioxide, right? And during this process ATP, that is energy, is released, right? So this is basically breakdown of sugar, which is carbohydrates, into alcohol and carbon dioxide, right? So therefore, as this process fermentation process was seen only in yeast, and yeast were known to carry out fermentation, and therefore the term ferments was given, because these was something that led to the formation of alcohol, right? So this is how fermentation takes place, and that is why yeast were known at that time to carry out fermentation. Now enzyme word literally means in yeast, so this is related to this point that at that time this fermentation process was only seen in yeast, and therefore enzyme term was actually coined, literally meaning that in yeast. So the fermentation that takes place in yeast led to the formation of alcohol, right? So then later on, sorry for this mistake, it is 1897. So in 1897, Edward Buchner, right, he is he is a chemist and a what do we call, zymologist is someone who studies about enzymes, right? So Edward Buchner, he did an experiment. What he did actually is, he took a mortar pestle and took some yeast cells in this along with sand and water, and grinded the yeast cell in this, right? He crushed the yeast cell in this mortar and pestle, and then whatever crushed part was there, he took it, he filtered it, right? So what happened, that the solid cells deposited here and the mixture was filtered, that led to giving a liquid which is called filtrate, right? So whatever goes down is called filtrate. So he separated filtrate from the solid grounded yeast cells, right? And then what was done, that he already had prepared a sugarcane juice solution, and so then he mixed the filtrate with sugarcane juice. So this that had the sugarcane juice was mixed with this filtrate that is obtained from yeast cells, right? So this filtrate, by now we can understand that this filtrate has enzymes, right? So then he found that when sugarcane juice was mixed with filtrate and kept, he closed this flask and kept it as it is. So when we close, there is no entry of oxygen and all, right? And therefore their anaerobic respiration takes place, and he saw that there is change in color, and this means that fermentation has occurred, and this has led to the formation of alcohol. So when the filtrate obtained from yeast cells was used with sugarcane juice, when it was mixed, it led to the formation of alcohol, which is our fermentation process, right? And in another flask, what he did, there was only sugarcane juice and no filtrate was added. So this filtrate was not added in this flask, and he obtained, what he obtained was that there was no fermentation, there is no color change, everything remained as it is, right? So there is no alcohol formation, right? So by this, what he concluded, he actually demonstrated that fermentation can be brought by lifeless chemicals rather than living yeast. So at that time it was believed that only living yeast can bring fermentation, so we require living yeast. That was believed at that time. But then he demonstrated that if we separate the filtrate from the yeast, right? So this filtrate had no living cell. So if we separate this filtrate and add it to the juice, so add it to the carbohydrate content, then this will lead to fermentation. So that was his result, that fermentation can be brought by lifeless chemicals rather than living yeast. So what are these lifeless chemicals? These are enzymes which are present in the filtrate. In the filtrate there are no yeast cells, that means the chemical is lifeless, right? So this was his major contribution, and this gave him Nobel Prize for this work. And Edward Buchner is mainly credited with actual discovery of enzyme, and therefore he had received Nobel Prize for this. Now, since he identified that there is something in the filtrate that led to the fermentation process, right? So he named this biocatalyst, that is something that leads to the reaction to the formation of alcohol. He named this complex of biocatalysts that were present in yeast as zymase. So he had actually extracted this filtrate from the yeast cell, and in the extracted filtrate he got this complex of biocatalyst. So at that time he named it as zymase, right? Something related to the term zymology, which means the study of enzymes, right? So he named it as zymase at that time, though now yeast is known to have many other kinds of enzyme, but this is a cumulative term that is used that was used at that time to name the biocatalyst, complex of biocatalyst that was obtained from that was known to be present in the filtrate, and these were actually enzymes, and this was named as zymase, right? So we all know that yeast is often used in process of making alcohol, right, and in many other cooking processes also. So that is because yeast carries out fermentation, it produces carbon dioxide, right? So this was the main experiment of Edward Buchner, and now from this we can define enzymes, that enzymes are proteins that act as biological catalysts, that is they help in accelerating the reaction. So when enzymes is present, the reaction become much faster. The molecule upon which enzymes act are called substrates. So here the substrate for us is sugarcane juice, which is a carbohydrate. It has sucrose, right? So the substrate is sucrose, and it converts a substrate into different type of molecule called as product. So for us, product here is alcohol, and in between there is some enzyme which is acting to form this alcohol. So this enzyme that is causing the acceleration in reaction, that is a biological catalyst, are actually proteins, right? So with this I hope that you are clear with what are enzymes. So now we move towards the topic of nomenclature and classification of enzymes. So we know nomenclature is the naming, right? So naming of anything is called nomenclature. For us here, nomenclature is naming of the enzymes. So when enzyme discovery had started, so there we know that enzyme is specific, right? Enzyme has specificity, which means that every enzyme is specific for every substrate. Not all enzyme is going to bind to any substrate, right? So enzyme will only bind to its known substrate, because it is like lock and key, right? So not every enzyme can match with every substrate. So enzyme has its own specificity, and there are large number of reactions, right, that are going on. We know that there are so many biological reactions that happen in our body, right, that happen in the environment, that happen in the plant, that happen in animals, right? So all of these reactions, since enzymes are specific, right, all of these reaction would have n number of enzymes. So thousands of different enzymes are known, and because of large number of reactions and because of enzyme specificity, it is obvious that there will be so many enzymes, right? Because every enzyme is not going to bind to every substrate, and there are so many substrates. Every substrate has require certain enzyme, and all of these have different functions, right? So every enzyme has its own function. So because of this, previously there were so many schemes that were used as and when enzymes were discovered and characterized. So many schemes were used, many different patterns of naming and classification were used, depending upon when the particular enzyme was discovered and characterized. So we are going to understand the various nomenclatures that were used and the classifications that were used for enzymes, right? So this is a common thing that usually enzymes are named by adding a suffix ase, although there are exceptions, but this is a common pattern that suffix is added, ase is added to name the enzyme, right? So first of all, we are going to understand the nomenclature of enzyme. Now there are many ways by which these were named. So the first is substrate acted upon by enzyme. So this means that suffix ase was added to the substrate on which it acts. So by now we know that enzymes act upon substrate and then give product. So the enzyme is acting upon which type of substrate. So depending upon that substrate, the ase was added to the substrate name. So for example, when enzyme acts upon protein, the enzyme was called protease. When the substrate is urea, the enzyme was called urease. When it is pectin, the enzyme was called pectinase. If it is starch or amylum, amylum is another name for starch, then it is called amylase. And there are also certain more specific names. For example, that enzyme which acts upon substrate maltose is called maltase, and that which acts upon sucrose is called sucrase, right? So this is more specific because it is exactly specifying the substrate, whereas in here this is not exact specificity, but we know that something that acts upon protein is called protease. But proteins, if we say, there are so many types of proteins, but it is not specified that which type of protein. Similarly, there are so many types of carbohydrates. So maltose is one such carbohydrate, and that which acts upon maltose is called maltase, right? Then the second type of nomenclature was based upon the type of the reaction catalyzed. So what is the reaction that is going on? Based upon that, name was given. So suffix ase was added in the name of the reaction. So whatever the reaction is, after its name, ase suffix was added. For example, enzymes that catalyze hydrolysis reaction were called hydrolases or hydrolase. That which catalyze oxidation reaction were called oxidases. That which catalyze dehydrogenation are called dehydrogenases. That which catalyze decarboxylation can be called decarboxylases. Similarly, that which carry out where transamination reaction happens were called as transaminases. And likewise phosphorylases for phosphorylation reaction. Then another kind of nomenclature was substrate acted upon by the type of reaction catalyzed, right? So two things were considered, that was based upon the substrate acted upon, that is substrate, was also considered while naming, and the type of reaction that was catalyzed was also considered during naming. So this actually gives clue of both substrate and the type of reaction. Say for example, succinate dehydrogenase, which means that dehydrogenation reaction is going on of the substrate succinic acid. So succinate dehydrogenase, that is dehydrogenation of succinic acid. Then L-glutamic dehydrogenase, which means dehydrogenation reaction of L-glutamic acid, which is the substrate. Right. So with such name we can also identify the substrate, and we can also identify the reaction. And one such another example is phosphoglucoisomerase, which means that isomerization reaction is carried out of phosphoglucose, which is the substrate. Right. So then there is another nomenclature that is carried out, which is based upon substance that is synthesized. So that means that what is the product that is formed. Now here suffix is added to the name of the substance synthesized. In short, suffix is added to the name of the product. So with enzyme and substrate, when they combine, what we get is product. So to the name of the product, ASE is added. For example, rhodonase is an enzyme that forms rhodonate. So rhodonate is the product which is formed from hydrocyanic acid and sodium sulfate. These two are substrates. Rhodonate is the product, and based on its name, rhodonase is formed. Similarly, fumarate, which is the formation of fumarate from almalate. Almalate is the substrate, fumarate is the product based on which fumarase enzyme name has been given. Now another nomenclature is where we cannot identify whether is there any indication of substrate or reaction. You cannot identify from the name of the enzyme that whether it is indicating substrate or reaction or anything. Right, so nothing is much clear from the name. For example, trypsin. Now trypsin is something that breaks down protein, but you cannot relate the name to protein. Right, so trypsin is an enzyme which breaks down protein. Similarly, lysozyme. Lysozyme is an enzyme that breaks down peptidoglycan, cell wall of bacteria. Right, so peptidoglycan is the cell wall of bacteria, and lysozyme is a very strong enzyme which kills the bacteria. Right, so but you cannot relate this name to something called peptidoglycan, or but you can relate lyase, for example, you can relate to breakdown, but then though it is not very much clear what is its role. Right, so like this some names were given in this way. Then based on the source, so what is the source from which the enzyme is obtained, based on that also name were given. For example, some enzyme that is obtained from papaya is called papain. Then that is which is obtained from ficus tree, that is its fruit latex. Figs are the fruits of ficus, so from its latex it is called ficin. From Bacillus subtilis, this is a bacteria, so enzyme that is obtained from Bacillus subtilis is called subtilicin. Though you can notice that in some enzymes here ASE is not added as suffix. Right, so this is it about the nomenclature part. So previously this kind of nomenclature were used in various schemes. So now let us have a look into what were the classifications of enzymes that were used. So first is based on the site of action, that is where is the location at which the enzyme is acting. Based on this there are two types. These are endoenzymes and exoenzymes. right? So by the name itself, we can explain that enzymes that act within the cells, that is inside the cell, are called endoenzymes, and therefore these are also called as intracellular enzymes, that which acts inside the cell. And one such example is cytochrome oxidase. Now exoenzymes are ones that are liberated by living cells, and these catalyze the useful reaction outside the cell. So exoenzymes are ones that are formed in one cell, and then they liberate outside the enzymes are liberated outside the cell, and they catalyze reaction is catalyzed outside the cell. So these are called exoenzymes, that is things that are happening outside the cell, and therefore these are also called extracellular enzymes. Examples of these are amylase, lipase and protease. And all the bacterial and fungal enzyme, mostly these are exoenzymes, they have extracellular enzymes, and here most of the plant enzymes are intracellular enzymes, right? This is a very important point. All the bacterial and fungal enzymes, they produce extracellular enzymes where they act upon something that is outside the cell's environment, right? So the another type of very older classification of enzymes, this was based upon the reaction the enzymes catalyzed. So these were basically divided into two types. These are hydrolyzing enzymes and desmolizing enzyme. So hydrolyzing enzymes, all the enzymes which produce cleavage in the substrate by action of hydrogen. So all those enzymes which by the action of water molecule bring cleavage in the substrate, that is they break the substrate into two with the help of water molecule. By the action of water molecule were known as hydrolyzing enzymes. One such example is esterase. Similarly, desmolizing enzymes also used to bring cleavage between in a molecule and producing two molecules, but this was done without the action of water molecule. So this was done non-hydrolytically. So these are called desmolizing enzymes, and such example is oxidases. Right, so this is the older classification of enzymes. Now as you can see, there were so many schemes in nomenclature, and there are also some different schemes in classification. So this led to confusion in terms of keeping a record of all the enzymes and which enzyme is of which type. Actually, this led to a confusion, and this prompted the International Union of Biochemistry, IUB, right? This is the International Union of Biochemistry, and they actually appointed an enzyme commission. This enzyme commission was given the task of devising a proper standard nomenclature and classification system for the enzymes. So this was appointed for standard naming system. So now we are going to understand that what is the standard naming system that goes that is appointed by International Union of Biochemistry, right? So let us understand the classification of enzymes. So the classification of enzymes that is given by International Union of Biochemistry, IUB, with the help of enzyme commission. There are mainly 6 types of enzymes that were classified. This is class 1, oxidoreductases, second transferases, third hydrolases, 4 lyases, 5th isomerases, and 6th ligases. Like this, 6 classes were made, and all the enzymes were categorized into these 6 classes, Now this classification is given by the IUB, and this is mainly based on the general function, that is what is the general function of the enzyme. Based on that, these 6 classes were made, and there were also subgroups made under each of these classes. So this is class 1. Class 1 has further subclass and subgroups also, but we are not going to understand everything about the subclass and subgroup. We will only understand these 6 classes in a bit more detail. So subgroups are also used to define their functions more precisely. So if there is oxidoreductases, then it also had further subgroups, so that to separate the function of each of the enzyme that falls in this category. Right, so we start with the understanding of this, but before that, let us understand that IUB had also given a nomenclature system where enzyme has been assigned a name. Every enzyme has been given a name with a 4-part number. Every enzyme has been given a 4-part number. Now understand that what is the 4-part number with the example of carboxypeptidase A. Now this is an enzyme which is carboxypeptidase A. This enzyme has been given this number, right, which is EC 3.4.7.1. right. Now each of this has a meaning. Now EC is nothing but enzyme, right, and the first 3 digits, in which 3 is the major class, right. 3 is the main class to which the enzyme belong, and subclass 4 is the subclass, that is under this class number 3, the 4th subclass, right, and under this subclass 4th, the 17th subclass. It can also be called as the subgroup, and the number 1 denotes when it was added to the list. So what is the time, not time, but the sequence, that whether it was added the first, whether it was the second enzyme added, whether it was the third enzyme added. So from this we can understand that carboxypeptidase A is the first entry, right, first entry in the 17th subclass. So this is the 17th subclass. Likewise, there would be 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th. All these subclass are also present, but this is the first entry in the 17th subclass of the 4th subclass, right. Like this, there could be 3, 3rd, 2nd, 1st subclass also, but this is the 4th subclass and of class 3. In our case, class 3 is hydrolysis. Remember the classification that we just saw previously, it had 6 classes. The 3rd class was hydrolysis. So this belongs to the class hydrolysis, the 4th subclass of hydrolysis, and the 17th subclass of 4th subclass, and this is the very first enzyme that was listed in subclass 17th. Right, so I hope that this is clear. Like this, in this way, many enzymes has been named and has been given a number, and since then the list of enzymes classified in this way keeps on growing, because obviously as new enzymes are discovered and characterized, the list is going to increase. Right, so this is about the nomenclature given by IUB. Now we are going to understand each of the classes that we saw in the classification. So the first class that we saw is oxidoreductases. Right, now oxidoreductases are all the enzymes that take part in biological oxidation and reduction reaction. So whatever oxidation and reduction reactions are there, in that reaction whichever enzymes take part are called oxidoreductases enzymes. Now these are further classified into three types, that is oxidases, dehydrogenases and reductases. So we can name this as the subclass, right? So we are going to understand each of these three with an example. So let us first understand oxidases. So oxidases, in oxidases, molecular oxygen is one of the reactant. So we know that there are substrates which can also be called as reactant. So one such reactant is molecular oxygen in oxidases, and here the enzyme causes oxidation of the substrate. Now what is oxidation, that I'll explain you when we see the reaction. And this oxidation is carried out with the help of molecular oxygen. With the help of molecular oxygen, the oxidation of the substrate is carried out. And in this process, there is removal of hydrogen from the substrate to oxygen. This leads to the formation of water molecule or hydrogen peroxide as one of the product. So this is the reaction where we can understand that AH2, that is A is the substrate, so it could be any substrate, right? So in here we have just taken a common symbol for substrate, which is A. This substrate is along with hydrogen molecule H2, right? And this when combines with oxygen, half mole of oxygen, gives what is happening. See, the substrate A is getting separated, and the H2 from the A and the half mole of O2 gives us water molecule, right? So this is oxidation. Now as I told, I'll explain what is oxidation with the reaction. So oxidation is basically the addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen from the substrate, right? So you see this substrate has hydrogen, so hydrogen gets removed. This is oxidation. Similarly, there are some cases where oxygen gets added, so then that is also called oxidation. Oxidation is mainly the loss of electron, right? So this is called oxidation. Let us not go much deep into it. For now you can just keep it simple, that oxidation is the removal of hydrogen or addition of oxygen from the substrate. So for us the substrate is A and H2 is removed, that led to formation of separation of substrate and formation of water molecule. One such another reaction is where H2 gets removed along with oxygen. This gives hydrogen peroxide and the substrate gets removed. So here it is also removal of hydrogen, right? Here the molecular oxygen here is a kind of oxidizing agent along with the enzyme oxidases. So oxidizing agent is something that causes oxidation, right? So here I had written that removal of hydrogen from the substrate take place to oxygen. So from the substrate hydrogen is removed, and it is then giving us the product with oxygen, which is hydrogen peroxide in the second reaction and water molecule in the first reaction, right? So this is about oxidases. Some examples of oxidases are cytochrome oxidase, ascorbic acid oxidase. So for those who do not know what is cytochrome oxidase, it is an enzyme in respiratory electron transport, and ascorbic acid is an vitamin, right? So for the oxidation of ascorbic acid oxidase is used, right? See, from this name you can also identify the type of naming, right? Ascorbic acid oxidase, which means that oxidation reaction will take place of the substrate ascorbic acid. Right, so now we move towards the second type of oxidoreductases, which is dehydrogenases. So by the name itself, you can identify that it is removal of hydrogen from the substrate, not the removal of oxygen. So this is a very simple reaction where A is the substrate. So hydrogen gets removed from the substrate, right? And in this oxygen though is not getting removed, right? So hydrogen gets removed. This leads to formation of product A with removal of 2 hydrogen, right? So this is dehydrogenases, that is removal of hydrogen. And some examples of dehydrogenases are malate dehydrogenase and succinic dehydrogenase. See, again you can understand what is the type of naming. Malate is a substrate, dehydrogenase means dehydrogenation is the reaction, right? Now the third type of oxidoreductases are reductases, right? So by the name itself, we can identify that these catalyze the reduction reactions, right? So we saw what is oxidation. It is just the opposite of oxidation, which we call as reduction. So what I had told, that in oxidation there is either addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. So in reduction, there would be either removal of oxygen or addition of hydrogen. So this mainly involves gain of electron. Oxidation always involves loss of electron, and reduction process always involves gain of electron. So this causes addition of hydrogen or removal of oxygen, right? So and always a coenzyme is required in this process. Coenzyme is something that helps the enzyme in carrying out the process, in carrying out the reaction. So this is the reaction that we can understand. See, NADH2 is a coenzyme. Okay, so NADH2 gets converted to NAD, and this is the substrate. So as I told that there would be removal of oxygen in reduction. So you can see that the NO3 when it becomes into product, there is a loss, there is a removal of oxygen, right? From the O3, one oxygen is removed and you are getting NO2, right? And from the NADH2, which is the coenzyme, H2 gets removed, and the one oxygen that is removed from here, these two combine and give water molecule. So this is reduction reaction where there is removal of oxygen from the substrate, right? Now let us move towards the second type of class, which is transferases. So as the name suggests, it is easy to identify that these enzymes cause group transfer. So it leads to transfer of functional groups from one molecule to another. So when there is need of transferring functional groups, we know there are many functional groups, there are ketone groups, there are carboxylic groups, right? So when there is need of transferring functional group from one molecule to another, then transferases come in action. So there could be many groups that can be transferred, like alkyl, amino, aldehyde, sulfur, phosphorus, right? Now transferases are mainly of two types. These are transaminases and phosphokinases, right? So let us understand each of these two with one example. So transaminases is mainly the transfer of amino group, right? So amino group will get transferred from one molecule to another. You can easily understand this with its name itself. And phosphokinases is the transfer of phosphorus group, right? So, and this leads to the formation of actually ATP. Let us understand first of all transaminase. So this is the basic reaction. So what is happening actually? See, this is the formula where you can see that this is a keto group, right? And here there is NH2 group. So see what is happening. The NH2 group is getting transferred here, and the keto group is getting transferred here. So this is transaminase where NH2 group gets transferred to another molecule. This is different molecule. This is R1 alkyl group, means this is a different alkyl group, and R2 is another alkyl group, right? So this is transaminase reaction. So you can see that NH2 group is transferred from one molecule to another. So one example of this is the following reaction, right? So what is happening? See, glutamate is there. Glutamate is an amino acid, glutamic acid, right? So this is ionic form of glutamic acid. So here there is amino group. It combines with oxaloacetate. Oxaloacetate is the intermediate of citric acid cycle. I hope you all know what is citric acid cycle. This is also an intermediate in glyoxylate cycle and many reactions. So glutamic acid, which is an amino acid, combines with oxaloacetate. In presence of enzyme aspartate transaminase, gives ketoglutarate plus aspartate. Now see what is happening. The amino group is getting transferred to this group actually, which is oxaloacetate. So see what is happening, that both of this, when reaction takes place, NH3 plus is added up here. So this is a 4 carbon molecule and this is 5 carbon molecule, right? So the 5 carbon molecule transfers amino group to the 4 carbon molecule, right? So here we can see that the 4 carbon molecule is having amino group and the keto group has moved to the 5 carbon molecule, leading to the formation of ketoglutarate and aspartate. So this is transaminase reaction, right? The COO minus is carboxyl group, COO is always keto group, and NH3 plus is amino group. So transfer of amino group from a 5 carbon compound to a 4 carbon compound, leading to the formation of aspartate. Aspartate is also an amino acid. This is the ionic form of aspartic acid, right? So this is transaminase. Now let us understand what is phosphokinase. So as I told, phosphokinase is the transfer of phosphorus, right? So see, in this substrate, this is phosphoenol pyruvate. Okay, so phosphoenol pyruvate is also called PEP. It is a kind of a compound that is formed in gluconeogenesis, right? So for phosphoenol pyruvate, you can see that there is phosphorus group present, right? So phosphorus group is present. Now this phosphorus group is transferred to ADP. Actually, ADP is adenosine diphosphate. That is, ADP has two phosphorus group. So it takes this one phosphorus groups and this leads to the formation of adenosine triphosphate, which has 3 phosphorus now. So this happens in the presence of pyruvate kinase enzyme, and this is a phosphokinase. So actually what is happening, that this is ADP is also a substrate here, and there is transfer of one phosphorus from one substrate to another substrate, leading to two products. One is pyruvate and the other is what we call ATP. ATP we know is energy repository. So in this way ATP is formed, and this is also called as substrate level phosphorylation, because here phosphorus ATP is formed by using ADP as a substrate. So this is substrate level phosphorylation. Like this there is other kind of phosphorylation also. Now let us move towards the third class of enzyme, which is hydrolysis. So hydrolysis are enzymes that cause cleavage of the substrate. So here the substrate will be broken down by addition of water molecule. So as the name suggests, water molecule will be added. So from one molecule there will be two molecules that will be formed. So for example, we have sucrose, which sucrose water molecule combines in the presence of an enzyme invertase, which is a hydrolase, leads to the formation of two molecules, one of glucose and one of fructose. Right, so this is hydrolysis. So from one molecule two molecules are formed. Another examples are carbohydrases, esterases, proteases and phosphatases. These all are hydrolysis. Right, now we move towards the fourth class, which is lyases. So enzymes that help in removal or addition of a group non-hydrolytically. Now these are also enzymes that will lead to breakdown, but this will happen non-hydrolytically. That is, hydrogen will water molecule will not play a role. This mainly happens by rearrangement of electrons. So we can understand with this example. This is fructose 1,6 biphosphate, right? So here there are two phosphorus group and therefore diphosphate or biphosphate. It gets converted into dihydroxyacetone phosphate DHAP and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, right? So from one molecule two molecule is formed. So but no hydrogen is acting in no water molecule is acting in this process. The enzyme responsible is fructose biphosphate aldolase, right? Don't get scared by the structural formula. Actually this is easy, but if you do not want to write the structural formula, you can just directly write that fructose 1,6 diphosphate in presence of fructose biphosphate aldolase gives dihydroxyacetone phosphate plus glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, right? So you can write in that way also reaction, but this is for you to just understand that how two molecules are formed, right? So this is lyases. So fructose biphosphate aldolase is a lyases. Examples are fumarase, carboxylase, aldolase. So this is one aldolase. Another such type of lyases reaction we can see is the conversion of pyruvic acid to acetaldehyde, right? So this happens in presence of pyruvate carboxylase, right? So here also hydrogen water molecule is not involved. That is direct conversion of pyruvic acid, addition of a group to another molecule, right? So this is about lyases. Now we move towards the fifth class, which is isomerases. So isomerases, as the name suggests, are enzymes that will help in isomerization reaction. So these are enzymes that catalyze intramolecular rearrangement. That is, in one molecule only rearrangement of functional group will take place. So this is movement of a functional group within a molecule itself, right? So we can understand this with this example, where glucose 6-phosphate gets converted into its isomer fructose 6-phosphate. So the only difference between glucose 6-phosphate and fructose 6-phosphate is that they have a functional group difference. See, glucose 6-phosphate has keto group in this carbon, whereas fructose 6-phosphate has keto group in this carbon. So this is moment of a functional group within a molecule itself. The molecule is same, but this is the moment of functional group that takes place in a molecule itself, which leads to isomers, and this is carried out by phosphohexoisomerase. Right, now the last, sixth class is ligases. These are also called as synthetases because these bring about the combination of two molecules. So these enzymes join two molecules to form one single molecule. So from two molecules, one single molecule is formed. These catalyze the synthesis of different types of bond. Obviously, when two molecules combine, it is very much clear that when two molecules combine, a bond will be formed. So this catalyze the synthesis of different types of bond. So the various bonds that could be formed are carbon-carbon, carbon-nitrogen, carbon-sulfur, or carbon-oxygen. So let us understand this with one example, which is of succinyl-CoA. So this is succinyl-CoA, right? You can see that there is S-CoA. CoA is a coenzyme, right? Now this succinyl-CoA combines with water and GDP plus Pi. This leads to formation of succinic acid. So what is the change is that two molecules is forming one molecule. Right, what is happening? See, S-CoA is getting removed here, right? So here OH is added. Right, OH is added from this water molecule. So water molecule has OH and H, so OH is added here, rest is present as it is. Right, and the H of the H2O goes with CoA SH. Right, that is goes with S-CoA. So CoA S and H is added, and GDP gets converted to GTP. This is diphosphate, this is triphosphate. So one phosphorus phosphate is added, leading to GTP. This is happening in the presence of succinyl-CoA synthetase. So you can see that two molecules is forming one molecule. Succinyl-CoA and water molecule together is forming succinic acid. So this is example of ligases. Right, and another such example is the formation of the conversion of pyruvate to oxaloacetate. So pyruvate, you can see, is a 3-carbon compound, and this is carbon dioxide. Right, so this 3-carbon compound is combining with carbon dioxide to form a 4-carbon compound. So this carbon gets added over here. So this rest all is same, except that there is addition of this CO2 here. Right, so one C is added. Right, and the O2 is also added, leading to formation of oxaloacetate. Right, so this happens in the presence of pyruvate carboxylase, which is a ligase enzyme, and here ATP gets converted to ADP, that is one phosphorus molecule is used up in this process. Right, so this is the example of ligases. As I told, don't worry, you do not have to remember all the reactions. This is just for your understanding. But if you feel that you can easily it becomes easy for you with the structural formula, then do it that way. And if you feel that you cannot remember the structural formula, just directly write the reaction, that succinyl-CoA plus water plus GDP plus PI in presence of the enzyme gives succinic acid plus GTP plus CoA-SH. And likewise pyruvate plus CO2 plus O2 in the presence of pyruvate carboxylase will give oxaloacetate plus ADP plus PI. So it depends upon you how you want to what is comfortable to you, right? So either way you can give the reactions. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this topic. I'll soon explain you the rest part. Till then, if you have any doubt, you can clear and ask me, right? So thank you.